Hi, and welcome to my monthly blog. And as usual, it's always that reflective process about what the month's energy has been. And I've really been aware that this month time has been short, so I think is the key thing, and communication. So I've titled my newsletter He Said, She Said, because just little words this month have caused the biggest sense of confusion, sense of argument, impatience, frustration, and yet the words themselves have been really quite simple. And how we interpret those words, and I think in the digital world, because we're cross-pollinating different cultures with what we may think is an okay word, another culture may not think is an okay word. And I suppose this lesson has sort of reminded me of an event. I have a book that I published for children, and it's called Fruit Salad for Kids. And it's really to help them correlate good food with health, with inner health, and how to get fruit or vegetables that really support their Reiki system. So it's like a small indication to help young children understand their own healing power within the Reiki system, the chakras, and so it's called Fruit Salad for Kids because that's the game I play with children. So when they come to me for a Reiki session or a healing of some kind, then I'll use that as a way of getting them to put their hands on their chakra points, and we think about different foods that they could nurture themselves with. And I happened to give this book to someone who is an American person. And so for her, she said that actually the book wouldn't really sell in America because fruit is a term that would be used to call someone gay. And I'm like, wow, I would never have actually picked that up. I would never have thought that that would have been something that could be interpreted as that, because fruit salad for me is something that you eat. So therefore, that was my process. And so that's a really extreme version, but communication over the last, what I would say, sort of 5 to 8 weeks has been really, really difficult for some of my clients. And they're having to rethink trying to get their message across and the words that they're using to get their message across. So for myself, I'm very literal, and I think that's just part of my learning abilities. Where when I see a word, then I will absolutely, that's what that word means for me. So a really funny incident that I had just a couple of weeks ago where someone was showing me an email and she printed it off and she's now there's two attachments to that. So I'm saying, well, could you show me the email again? Because I didn't see the attachments. But actually what she was meaning was we need to attach two documents to the email. So again, it's just that very literal interpretation. And how are we getting our message across? I think that for some of you out there, it's been a time where you felt a little bit depleted, or like it's that never ending pushing water up a hill. Nobody's hearing me, they're not listening, or they're not hearing what it is that I'm saying. And there's a real difference because the hearing part is a very active process. So I call myself a really active listener. I listen to everything that everybody says, and I will think about that and think about that for quite some time before I then will go back and say, oh, by the way, remember we had that discussion? And it could be 2 or 3 weeks. I'm still thinking. So I have very active hearing. So I do hear what people say. Whereas for some people, they feel that they're not being listened to or no one is hearing what they're saying. And I think that's a real stumbling block for people because when we come across situations where we're not being heard or people are not listening to what we've got to say, we feel undervalued, we might feel that we are not being recognized. We might also feel that, "Well, what's the point?" So we might have this whole process of, "Well, actually, what's the point? I'm as well not saying anything." So what I would say to you is that it is really important to just keep putting yourself across, but in different ways. Try reshaping what it is that you're saying. Try a different set of vocabulary so that the message can be interpreted differently. So, a bit like this conversation over a memo with attachments, it wasn't until I questioned her in my very literal way and said, "Well, actually, where are the attachments? I can't see the attachments in the memo." But when she actually said, "Well, actually, no, we need to create these other documents and attach that." So I said, "Oh, yeah, well, I get that now." So we can reinterpret or re engage with the people that we're trying to by becoming really aware of how they hear or how they listen to what we're saying. And I, I suppose I'm really reminded of my son Nathan when he was much younger. And I remember we're in the kitchen and he said, "You're not listening to me. You're not listening to me. What's the point? You're not listening to me." He was in that sort of teenage age, sort of 13, 14 years old. And I said, "I may not look like I'm listening to you, but I actually have heard what you've said. And this is actually what you've said to me." And of course, he hadn't won the battle. So therefore, that was yet another sulk. But I think for him, he understood that I may look distracted or I was maybe looking busy, but I was actually hearing what he was saying. I think also what has really, really come to the fore over the last 6 to 8 weeks is the whole be careful what you ask for. And again, that's that line of communication. What are we asking for? So, in our manifestations and in our hopes and our wishes and in our desires to bring in, achieve, or obtain the success that we want, are we actually phrasing those words in such a way that we do get what we want? Because we have that phrase, that old saying of be careful what you ask for, it may not be what you want. So the universe is listening. The universe is always listening. The law of attraction, the virtues, everything is listening. And the powers that be will interpret what it is that you have been saying. And I have actually found this really quite obvious over the last 6 to 8 weeks. And I've really found that some of the ways I've been saying things, they've come about in a very different way, a quite unexpected way. And I thought, wow, that wasn't actually what I meant. But thank you so much for responding or for giving me a response to my thoughts or my requests, my asking that I'm putting out there. So be really careful because the vibration and the veils are quite thin. And I talked about Mercury in my last newsletter. Not the planet, but actually the god. And Mercury is the messenger of the heavens above with these little winged feet. He's flying around, and as that God energy, he's hearing and listening and sort of trying to interpret what we're saying. But are we being clear? Are we being defined in what it is that we're putting out there? So be really aware of what it is that you're saying and how you're saying on that universal level, because it may come into being, but it may not necessarily be the way that you wanted it. And I've had some amazing surprises. I am going with the flow because I've asked the question and I have put that out there, but it hasn't actually come about by the way that I thought it would. So there's happy coincidences or happy events, which I'm just going with the flow and formulating a way of rethinking or reimagining how I would think about or ask for those things in future. But at the end of the day, I think that as you learn to correlate with your asking and what you've then been given, if you can correlate how that all sort of connects together, then you can then refine what it is that you're saying. And I think that's the key thing to remember. We can and do have opportunities to just keep refining aspects of our personal requests so that we do eventually get on to that wonderful vortex that Abraham Hicks talks about. And we are on that fine, fine, fine vibration where we're asking and receiving and we're asking and receiving, but we have to be so careful in how we communicate that to the larger forces out there. And I think for my clients, it's been a big change, I suppose. My clients are moving on to um, online classes. They're moving on to online sessions where it's phone or Skype, and how that communicates has been really intriguing for me to watch because I happened to come in the back door on one of my live webinars, and two of the students were already there. And they were chit chatting away because on the live webinar, everyone sees everyone. So that community feel just begins to grow as people recognize who they are. And one of the students was saying, "Oh, I did her first webinar class, and this is the way to go." She lives quite far away from me, about 4 hours away from me here in New Zealand, and for her, it means that she can expose herself to her own self development and her own learning from the comfort of her home, from the comfort of being comfortable, being in our own space, but still getting the learning and still getting the content. And she was just really talking to a new student who's just come on to the live broadcasts. And so for her, it was really exciting. And again, for my students in Australia, they join in being at that distance, but having that one-on-one. And I think that was what the student was saying. She is better because she will individually, Phyllis will individually say, so how is that for you? And how is that for you? So I feel in communication wise, how I'm communicating with my clients has definitely changed. And for some of you, I know that's not quite difficult, but it's having that perception, well, how does that work? But I know for one of my clients this week, where they would normally come for a physical session, and we had a phone session, and I did some theta work with her. And she went, "Oh, I can actually feel that. How does that work?" And I said, "Well, because we're working on those higher planes." Did another bit of theta with her. She went, "Wow, I really felt that. I feel lighter." And she started to giggle because the experience for her was actually quite enriching. And she suddenly felt, when I asked for her feedback at the end, well, this is your first phone session. How was that for you? And she commented on how it was just as enriching as being with me personally. But the big thing for her was she didn't have to take time off work. She wasn't missing out on her day off. She could put the phone down and go and be where she needed to be. And my another lovely client in her 70s, first time on Skype, and she loved it. She was at her daughter's house. Once the Skype was finished, or at the end of the session, how was that for you? She's actually, this is really quite cool. I can end this conversation and I could go next door and be with my grandchild. So communicating and communication with my client base is changing, but how they perceive my healing skills and how they can still benefit from that, that's been a real biggie for me over the last 6 to 8 weeks. And I've been meaning to get my newsletter finished, I would say, for the last well, it's the 21st, so I normally have it finished by about the 4th, the 5th of the month. So time has been short, long, standing still. Time has been a really huge factor this month as well. So I hope that some of that will have made sense. If you're not getting your message across, then just redefine your words or ask if someone, check that understanding. Did you understand what I just said? That does that make sense to you? Because if it doesn't, then that's the time when you go and say, well, what words is it that you want me to use that will help you comprehend what it is that I'm trying to say? And that will help ease the mercury effect that we've been having. I have in my newsletter, we've got our Ascension with the Masters coming up, and it will be a live webinar class. It will be a 10-week class. And I'll talk you through the manual as we go through week by week. So a webinar class, what that means is that when you come on board, you're enrolled physically onto the online class where the lessons are all set out week by week. There will be videos already in there of me talking through the class. There'll be meditation videos or recordings. So there might just be audio soundtracks in there. And then everyone links in on our class, and I will physically talk everyone through it. And it's a great opportunity to ask questions. The more questions that the students ask, then the more in-depth the class will actually be. And then the recording, the webinar class itself is always recorded and it's then posted in a bonus section. So for those of you who are used to being in my environment, but still want to do their self-development, I would check out the live webinar class. It might be something just to give it a go. They are slightly cheaper in terms of cost because we're not having to heat the room and use resources, etc. But the actual content, you have the full content that you would normally get on a physical class. And I've had quite a few requests for Arcturian light healing. This is something that was downloaded to me, about 8 years ago. I have 60 practitioners worldwide now using Arcturian, and one client who is a metagenics practitioner, he just loves the Arcturian healing panel. He uses that on in his clinic. Certainly my lovely friend in Australia, the Arcturians is her absolute favorite. She is my best Arcturian student. She uses the panel all of the time. So I've had 3 requests from students here, and it will be a physical class. It will be a long weekend class, so a Friday night for your attunement and introduction, then 2 full days of working with each other, getting your symbols, how to interpret those symbols, how to put strings of symbols together to get a prescription, and how to connect to the healing panel. So that's really exciting. I haven't done an Arcturian class for quite some time, but whoever comes on board, we could get up to 70 Arcturian practitioners out there, which would just be absolutely wonderful. And an advanced crystal healing weekend as well. So we'll we kind of have set the dates for the first weekend, and then we'll have a catch up. So you have plenty of time to get all your homework done. And we'll have our certificate ceremony. So that's for, again, being a request from students. So if you're ready to take that next step on your advanced crystal course, learning slightly deeper techniques, how to heal through meditation, through the meridian lines, the Chinese interpretations of physical ailments, and how we combine that with the crystals. And of course, you've got your crystal kit, which is a little bit more advanced. So you've got a beautiful new crystal kit to collect when you sign up on that one. So again, that's in August this year. So be sure to book in and become part of your own self-development and your own healing process. So it's all in the newsletter. Have a good look through the newsletter. And as always, I just love your feedback. I think it's so precious to me to get your feedback in to hear what you've got to say in terms of the value that the newsletter is giving to you, or the words that I'm expressing. I think for a lot of you, I find it tickles me. Actually, I find it quite funny when people go, "Wow, it's so cool to see that you're struggling with this as well." Because I am like everyone else, just simply a human being. So, of course, when the proverbial hits the fan, I then have to figure out how I'm going to work through that process. So, I actually really like that. I like when people come back and go, "Wow, it's so cool to see that you're having to deal with these issues." I think for me, as we move forward, and as we, especially here in Christchurch, as we move forward from events that have occurred, and again, that's all about communication, how we communicate amongst ourselves, how as a city we've communicated amongst our brothers and sisters that reside here, our local community, how on a political front that's been communicated globally, and how Jacinda has communicated um, a sense of dignity and a sense of um, patriotism, really, on some levels, that we are who we are, regardless of which community we belong to. I think if we start to look at the bigger picture on communication, said, she said, how did she say it? Um, I think that Christchurch should be exceptionally proud of itself. And I think we are absolutely proud of our leader and how she is communicating to the rest of the world. Well, this is actually how we could deal with an event, or maybe should deal with an event like we've had here. So there's always the bigger picture stuff. We've got it here in the minutiae when we just can't quite communicate, but actually, how are we communicating on that broader terms? How are you communicating out into the wide world? What are you putting out there that is attracting attention, be it good or bad? I don't know. You'll have to think about that yourself. So it's been a joy as always talking to you. I think the video newsletters are definitely seem to be hitting the mark rather than my big long screeds. So it'll be great to see people giving their feedback. And until the next time, enjoy the rest of your Easter holiday, and we'll see you on the next live chat. Take care for now. Bye.